Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning has arrived in cinemas. I got to see it early. You can see my non-spoiler review on the channel. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to join me in a spoiler talk of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Okay, this will contain spoilers, so if you have not seen it early or seen it on release day, do not watch this. But I had to talk about spoilers. It was really kind of difficult to talk about how different this Mission Impossible film was compared to the rest without going into spoilers, I guess we can go through a breakdown, One thing I love that Christopher McQuarrie has done, the first 4 films had different directors with Brian De Palma, John Woo, J.J. Abrams, and Brad Bird. Christopher McQuarrie has managed to have like a tone and formula that works, but each film feels different. Rogue Nation feels different than Fallout, and Fallout feels very different than Dead Reckoning. And this is part 1 of a film, And that's why I think I feel different about this too. There's a little bit more humor, kind of more akin to Ghost Protocol, or like I said earlier, late Connery, early Roger Moore Bond film. It wasn't a complete story, even though it was a complete experience. It was an MI7. There was still a lot left open, a lot more questions to be answered, and I think that's why, as Mission Impossible fans, we may feel different about this entry. They also did certain things with characters that I feel is a little bit unforgivable, but at the same time, better than Luther and Benji. I would have probably been more upset if it was Luther, but it's just the actress is so good and the character is so good that I have mixed feelings. But I guess we can break it down. This involves an artificial intelligence as a villain called the Entity. We see these Russian subs try to test it out to give them an advantage of being cloaked from every nation, being able to infiltrate any space underwater. And we get to see the AI become self-aware and turn rogue. That's something very interesting and different, and also timely. I mean, artificial intelligence is on the rise right now. This pretty much, along with Terminator, confirms my fears about AI. And me being kind of more of an analog person, I'm kind of looking forward for Ethan Hunt to bring down this AI in part 2, but I love the beginning of this. It reminded me a little bit of Hunt for Red October and Crimson Tide. It was crazy seeing how it used their technology against them. Then we're introduced to kind of an awkward scene of this delivery boy joining the IMF. It was kind of a different scene. I was like, okay, this is kind of a different tone compared to Fallout and Rogue Nation's opening. But I just love it where he ends up doing like a code word. Instead of saying like, I am the storm, they do some oath. And they make a delivery. And it was cool that it was a tape recorder because, Kittredge is back in this installment. So, that was very reminiscent to the TV show and the original film with, the cassette tape player. Even though it was, a voice recorder. And I liked the mission, it was all analog there. And that was probably also done on purpose, too, because they were aware of the Entity's existence, already messing up stuff already, And we find out Ilsa Faust has a bounty on her head. And it's crazy how John Wick 4 and Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 begin in the desert with, some horses. I don't know. It's just crazy. This is just like the John Wick 4 opening. But I love the scenery here. I mean, it was just really cool. It reminded me of classic James Bond, or just a spy adventure. And he saves Ilsa Faust. The only thing I have a problem with, they do a fake-out death, which I was happy with. But then they kill her off later, and I'm like, if you're going to do a fake out and then kill her later, I think I'd rather have had it here instead of there. But at the same time, I'm like, there wouldn't be any motivation. Going into this movie, I had 3 predictions, or 4 actually. I had a prediction that either Benji, Luther, or Ilsa was going to die. One of them was true. And then I had a prediction that they might fail the mission, because something has to happen. Something big has to happen for Ethan Hunt and his team for there to be a part 2 of this. Kind of like Infinity War to Endgame, Back to the Future 2 to Back to the Future 3. You know what I mean? Something big had to happen. But overall, I like the fake out. I love the scene they have together where she almost just kills him and Ethan's like, it's me. You don't know that yet. You have this whole opening, and Christopher McQuarrie does this wonderful thing where he creates suspense and anticipation for the intro. I'm like, where's the opening logos? Where's the opening intro? And it's kind of like Fallout, where he keeps going for a while in a prologue before he gets to the opening titles. We're then introduced to the CIA, Carrie Ellis. He pretty much took over for Angela Bassett's character, I think, but they have a picture of her behind him. And it's all these different people in the government. Kittredge is there, Eugene Kittredge, and there's this person that's coming in who looks odd, and I didn't know it was going to be Ethan Hunt. I thought it was going to be like a bad guy. Ethan Hunt's there, and there's a great scene where they're talking to each other, and he's just like, this mission is going to cost you dearly. And they have like a Dutch angle, and he's like, I can understand you're very upset, Hunt. And he's like, I'm not upset, Kittredge. And he's just like, which side are you on? And he's like, I'm the side I've always been on. And he's talking about taking control of the entity instead of destroying it. And that's where Ethan Hunt like disagrees. He's just like, do you listen to yourself? Have you listened to yourself? This thing must be destroyed. It's too much power for one person or one government to have. So this causes him to go rogue, and in brilliant fashion, he then puts on a Kittredge mask, and we get the opening titles. Beautifully done. Lauren Balfe, I forgot to mention this in my other review, the score is amazing yet again. He's one of my favorite composers. Like, I love his Terminator Genisys score, Bad Boys for Life, but Fallout in this, oh my god. He borrowed elements from the TV show's music with Mission Impossible 3's drum, and then added to the Fallout music. Like, it's just like a blend of everything Mission Impossible, and that's another reason why I feel like this might be like a conclusion film, or close to it, you know. And I love how it glitches out and shows moments. One thing I love about Mission Impossible, people don't know this, it's like it's a callback to the TV show and to the first 5th and 6th films, and even 4 to a degree. 4 had that, where they show what's going to happen in the movie, but it's like out of context. So it's not really spoilers. They're showing stuff, but you don't know it's spoilers till after you've seen it, and you're like, oh, that's what that was. It's just everything that's about to come in this adventure. And Tom Cruise, like I said, he's the man, and it was great after 5 years in a pandemic to see him return as Ethan Hunt. And we get Isaiah Morales as Gabriel, a villain here, and I was shocked. I thought going in they were going to pull a GoldenEye where he was a former IMF agent, kind of like Sean Ambrose, but like if him and Ethan were friends and he turned bad. This one, they knew this woman named Marie, and Gabriel kills her, and then Ethan Hunt, from the looks of it, was framed for murder and is arrested already with a record, and that's when he joined the IMF. So it's cool that we got to see partially like a de-aged Tom Cruise. It was done with shadows, but like you could tell it was like Rain Man era, like the Firm era Tom Cruise pre-Mission Impossible. Isaiah Morales is like Isaiah Morales now, but they made him look like he did younger when he was like in Bad Boys or what is it, La Bamba. Just a little bit, but if he looked like he more like he did now. But I just love that origin, because there's like so much of Ethan Hunt's past that Luther and Benji do not even know. And I'm like, that's crazy considering how long Luther's been with him. Like, even Luther doesn't know about this guy, so it's like, that must be somebody pretty deadly. And I have to say, he's a force to be reckoned with here. And I love their first mission with Shea Whigham after Ethan Hunt, the CIA after him, and that airport sequence is just beautifully done. Haley Atwell is a standout in this as Grace, as a thief. And it's crazy because Ethan Hunt recognized she was a thief, but then also she said that somebody trained her and helped her to hone her skills when she was a teenager. And I kind of have a theory that it might have been Nia Nordhoff Hall from MI2. I might be wrong, but that'd be a pretty cool way to connect Nia back to the franchise after all these years. I was just thinking about that like the other day when I saw this. I was just like, you know what? I wonder if it was like Nia that trained her. Because she would be like around that age and Nia would be like a mentor to her. And I'm like, that would be kind of cool. That'd be a cool connection to Ethan Hunt later too. But I just love this whole sequence and how they're deep faking Ethan Hunt's face on other people, so the CIA keep going to the wrong people. Beautifully done. And this is where Isaiah Morales is introduced, and he puts like a dirty bomb, basically going to a flight to Venice. And Benji has to stop it. They're doing this while trying to help Ethan Hunt. And Ethan Hunt realizes that Grace stole this key. Like I mentioned earlier, there's this key that looks like a cross, and it's a safe lock. Whoever controls that key can control the entity. All these people are trying to get this MacGuffin, and it's great. There's a lot of suspense. The buyer that they're going to go see is killed by this assassin named Paris. Pom Klementieff does a great job. I might have mispronounced her name, but she was on Guardians of the Galaxy. She plays a great role in this as Paris. She's Gabriel's henchwoman. Very much kind of like a Bond henchwoman. Like, there's some great spy tropes in this that is just good old-fashioned fun. But I love that. And then Gabriel is like masked, and Ethan Hunt sees him for a split second. And of course, we realize that the entity has been helping Gabriel stay a ghost. He hides his image, deletes his history from the database, and we found out earlier that the entity has been stealing intelligence from different nations around the world. So the IMF, CIA have to basically make hard copies of everything, because it's not only stealing information, but it's also perversing it, changing the truth. And that's something that's very relevant, like I said in my first review, about misinformation. Whoever controls the present day's truth can control the future. That's something very dangerous for any person to be in charge of, but also for like an AI to basically become self-aware and make all of us turn against each other. You know, that's pretty crazy. And in many ways, I guess it's like a more amplified version of what I learned growing up in school. It's like we learned about the Cold War. It's like we have an information war now, you know? And then like how social media and technology can be weaponized against us. It's very fascinating what this film explores, and overall they have to go find Grace, and then now she's on the CIA, IMF's radar, and she ends up getting arrested in Rome. There's some great humor there. There's some great humor when they finally tell Ethan Hunt about the dirty bomb. He's like, hey, an atomic bomb is something you should definitely have told me. Anyway, they abort the mission once he sees Gabriel. Haley Atwell's Grace is arrested, and then they said her lawyer is there, and it's Ethan Hunt. And the CIA people are after them. He uses the smoke bombs again like he did on Kidridge. And they go off into a car chase. This whole sequence with practical cars, real locations. It's just good old-fashioned movie making. It's movie magic at its finest. I love this chase. The CIA, Paris, they're after Grace and Ethan. And then there's a point where they get handcuffed. And you've seen it in the trailers, but it's even more insane than you think. Where he's driving on one hand, handcuffed. Him being on a police bike was crazy. Him going in a car. And then you thought he was going to have a sports car, and it's a little Fiat. And I love the humor there of him instantly crashing. It brought me back vibes of the Bourne Identity, to be honest. But ultimately, he ends up getting trapped on a train, and Grace screws him over yet again. She's pretty much kind of like a thief. She's kind of like Catwoman in this, you know, where she's just going to be like both sides, whatever is for her advantage. But she does grow a conscience throughout the film. And Ethan narrowly escapes that. And who saves him is Benji, and then Ilsa was out of the picture. He told her to stay out of it, stay dead. So she brought Benji and Luther along to help Ethan Hunt. And this is where we learn a bit more about Gabriel, and Ethan's just like, it's somebody that I thought was dead. And then they're like, anything that we see is going to be the entity messing with us. It's like, we don't know what's true. We found out Ilsa Faust was basically hired. And it was the entity that hired her. And he feels like he doesn't want them involved. He's just like, you're not more important to me than this mission. And then Luther's like, the mission has to be more important than our lives. And he's like, I don't accept that. I mean, you've seen that in the trailer. We get this cool party. I mean, they brought me some Fallout John Wick vibes. We get the CIA agents following there. I forgot the other actor's name. He was on Top Gun Maverick, but he was a great role in this. I could see him joining the IMF later in a future installment or even the next movie. But we get Gabriel and Grace meeting face to face, and now we're reintroduced to the White Widow. She did such a great job in this. I mean, that actress, Vanessa Kirby, looks so much like Vanessa Redgrave, where it's just like, I could tell that's Max's daughter. And then she like mentions, it's like, oh, it's John Lark, or are you really John Lark? And they have a lot of nods to the first film and to the last film as well. I mean, a lot of the films. And they talk about like what's going to happen with the power. And it's like, you don't understand the power I represent, and Gabriel's been chosen by the entity. Well, there's light LED screens in the club, and we find out that that's actually the AI interface itself. And that was a crazy scene where Ethan Hunt realized that, but then he also realized that the AI is afraid that Ethan might get close to destroying him. Because it basically is like a computer where it basically assesses different probable outcomes. And that's one of the outcomes that's most probable, is Ethan Hunt destroying it. So Gabriel gives them a choice for the White Widow, and the White Widow decides to side with Gabriel, and Gabriel gives Ethan a choice: Grace or Ilsa Faust will die. He doesn't accept that, so he goes and tries to hit him. And Gabriel's just like, it's good to see you, old friend. And he's just like, I swear to God, if anything happens to any one of them, I will kill you. That will be the end of your story. That's what's written. And it's good to have Ethan Hunt have a villain around his age, but also somebody from his past. I mean, there's just a lot. This is personal. So then there's this chase, and it's really good. Luther and Benji are helping him, but then you hear the audio from Mission Impossible Fallout when Benji was guiding Ethan Hunt, you know? And it's a turn right. No, the other right, left. And it's not Benji. It's the entity using Benji's voice earlier. to put Ethan Hunt into a trap. And we have this scene with another assassin and then Paris in an alleyway, and Ethan Hunt's like fighting. Gabriel gets to Grace. Grace tries to take him out on her own, and she gets knocked out. Ilsa Faust is there. Great fight. And it's crazy that like Isai Morales as a villain has fought like some of my favorite women in TV and film like the past 10 years is like Eiza Gonzalez is Satanical Pandemonium, Connor Leslie is Donna Troy, and now Rebecca Ferguson's Ilsa Faust, and sadly she gets stabbed and Ethan is too late to save her. And that got to me. That got to me, man. I was like, that's the one thing I kind of really do not like about this film. But that's just more of a personal preference. I did like the scene earlier. I really thought like Ethan Hunt was going to like hit Paris with like a crowbar, like a metal pipe. And he hits the brick, he spares her, and that's something that's important later. And that's one thing I was like, man, I felt kind of bad for Paris because, like, yeah, she was doing her job and stuff and was kind of mean, but it's just like, that's unfortunate. So Ethan's really at his lowest here. And they decide to basically give Grace a choice to join the IMF. And Grace feels guilty. She's like, she's dead because of me. And Luther basically tells her, you're alive because of her. So it's that train that we've seen in the previews. They have to go make masks. The problem is the mask thing, of course, went kaput. And Grace has a mask to be the White Widow. Ethan does not. So Ethan has to find a way to get on the train when it slows down on a curve in a certain area. So the mission starts, and Luther basically tells Ethan, I can't follow you anymore. I have to find out what's on this drive, what the entity wants, somewhere where he can't find me, somewhere where it can't find me, somewhere where it's safe. And he leaves Ethan. And that's where I really felt the weight of, like, he lost Ilsa. Luther's probably going to come back at the next part when he figures out what the entity's up to. But it's like, oh man, so it's just Benji, Grace, and Ethan. And I'm like, he's really going to be alone in this. They do the little thing where they like pre-visualize what the mission's going to be like, and then they show what actually happens. And Benji's like in a car following them. He has a self-driving car. And Grace is there. She does a pretty good job, actually. And she meets Kidridge. He's on that train. And we get a lot of backstory about the agreement that the White Widow had, or should I say her late mother Max had with Kidridge from the end of the first film. There's this whole part here with the train fight, Kidridge, it felt very much like the first 1996 movie in so many great ways. Grace ends up having kind of a conscience, you know, and she's like, that's what it cost me. I didn't think selling that key would be the only thing I would sell. And earlier, Ethan Hunt told her that to trust Kidridge, that to say that she'd be valuable. She was given a choice and that she accepted. That comes into play later. Then we find out Gabriel has arrived. He speeds up the train where he starts going faster. But then we find out the CIA director, Cary Elwes plays, is a villain that knew about the AI all along and wanted it. And he's aware of its existence. He knows where the submarine is. And he divulges this information to Gabriel, thinking they're making an alliance. And he's like, are you the only person that knows this? And he like slits his throat. And then he tries to kill Paris. He stabs her, basically. She ends up bleeding out a slow death later, but Gabriel stabs Paris because he said the entity told me that you were going to betray me. So it's just crazy that he's following this computer AI that's like predicting all these outcomes. That's another great thing, is that Luther said before the mission is that you want to kill Gabriel. What's your objective, Ethan? He's like, you have to keep him alive. And he's like, but also the AI is counting on either you or him dying, not you and him being alive, both being alive. So Ethan's like, I think you're right. And that's something that's very cool, is that now they're starting to think like the machine and starting to try to outsmart in a way of like, you didn't see this outcome. So Ethan has to get on the train, and that motorcycle stunt, they did not do that justice. He gets off and drops. That's something. I didn't think the camera was gonna freaking follow him into free fall. Like, that was just insane. I was just like, oh my God. And then Grace is in trouble. They figure out she's not really the White Widow. What's going on? She takes the key, and then Ethan crashes. There's some confusion. There's some fighting. And then Gabriel takes the key, and that's where Ethan has to follow him and basically fight him off. And Grace is going to try to stop the train, but she figures out that Gabriel messed with the thing, so they can't stop this train. Then the CIA agents are going after them. And it's cool because they say, Kidridge is just like, I'm officially not here, okay? I'm not really here. Unofficially. It's like unofficial, unsanctioned business. But I like it because they have the fight. And they did this for real. They built a practical train. And this reminded me so much of the first film. And I can tell ILM was involved because it was in the credits when they got to the tunnel scene. Because I was like, this is just like the first movie. Some great stuff there. And Ethan comes pretty close to like killing Gabriel, slitting his throat. Even to Gabriel's surprise, it's like, you can't kill me, I'm the one that knows everything. And then he's like about to kill him. And then the CIA guy's like, drop the gun, don't do this. And I was wondering if he knew somebody, or if he's Jim Phelps' son, because he seems to take Ethan Hunt's business personally. I don't know if it's just that he's hurt legends and is on the run, but there seems to be something personal between them that we don't know of yet, and I feel like that might be explored in part 2. I just have that feeling. But Gabriel ends up getting away, and he basically says to the CIA agents, Ethan Hunt is just like, you have to go talk to Kittredge and do everything I say. You have to stop this train and get people to the back. So he goes, and they realize they can't stop the train. He rejoins with Grace. And it's cool because she's like, did you get the key? And you see Gabriel, and he's all smiling, and then he realizes he has a lighter that Ethan Hunt had earlier as a gadget, and he stole the key from Gabriel. So even though Gabriel got away, Ethan Hunt still got the upper hand at the end, and I freaking love that, especially after everything he's been through. And this whole sequence was like Uncharted 2 on steroids. Gabriel has bombs that are going to detonate on this bridge, and the train, they end up having to derail the front engine part, like unplug it, unhook it. It goes off and actually really crashes, and then they have to keep going back on the carriages, or it's going to go over, and it's like going over one by one. They're like sideways. It's just nuts. It is just absolute insanity. There's a part with the piano that provided great suspense. Christopher McQuarrie really brought back the Brian De Palma level of suspense on this Mission Impossible entry. They officially get off. They survive with the help of Paris. She tells them where it's located and then dies, unfortunately, and it was a sad moment. But then there's a parachute that Luther gave to Ethan. He came in, man, Luther. But the problem is there's only room for one. So Grace stays behind, talks to Kittredge about the choice she accepts, and he's like, interesting. And Ethan Hunt goes. He gets away. And there's this whole like ending monologue about what's going to happen and the outcomes of the decisions that Ethan Hunt has faced. And basically everybody who gets close to him dies in his life and everything. And Ethan's really broken. Benji notices that Ethan's not really feeling himself, and it just ends with him reflecting on his moments with him and Benji driving off to the next part of the mission, which we're going to see next year. Although I did notice that Rolf Saxon as William Donlow was not in this film, even though he was photographed. So I wonder if he's going to play a part in part 2, whether it be helping Ethan Hunt find the submarine or if he was behind the entity. Because remember, he was sent to Siberia. I'm really wondering if he's going to play a vital role in the second part of Dead Reckoning. This film was kind of heavy in ways. I can see why it might have had the humor. Like, the humor is a little bit like, okay, this is weird. This feels off. But you know what? It's a film that I didn't really hate. Going into it, I knew it wasn't going to go live up to Fallout. Fallout was one of those rare films like Skyfall or The Dark Knight where that's just a really hard film to follow up and live up to. Am I worried that the series is getting a little bit derivative? Just a tad. But they still keep it fresh enough. And how many films after 7 installments can you say are this good? Like, I'm glad it hasn't gone Fast and Furious level yet. Weird, because I've been with this franchise, like many of you out there, since I was 5 years old watching the VHS, my mom's Mission Impossible VHS. I begged them to go take me to Mission Impossible 2, and we've been going as a family. And it's just emotional seeing, or should I say growing up and seeing Tom Cruise on screen as Ethan Hunt. He is like my James Bond, you know. Ethan Hunt, to me, is like what my parents felt like about Sean Connery as James Bond. Like, that's just how I equate it to. And overall, this film took some swings, and we have to see what part 2 is going to bring, because I can't fully judge it. It's kind of like Dune, where I'm like, part 2 is going to really dictate the overall quality of this film. For me, there's elements of Rogue Nation I like more than this, especially with Ilsa Faust. But I probably have this either tied with Rogue Nation or a bit over Rogue Nation. It might go up, might go down with part 2. We don't know. And then my two favorites are still the first Mission Impossible from '96 and the Fallout. I think is still the best one. Like, it's got everything right, fired on all cylinders, but also it's a complete experience. Where this, I'm like, we only saw the first half of the story, so I can't fully judge. And I think that's why I feel different towards it. But I have to say, I liked it, but it is different. So you have to go in with that mindset. This is going to be a very different Mission Impossible film. I loved how it ended with the blue screen and then Dead Reckoning in part 1. So when you watch together on home video, it'd be like an intermission almost. Like, I wonder if they're going to do a double feature when part 2 is out. That'd be cool. I stayed after the credits and there was no Mission Impossible 8 trailer. I'm betting that's probably going to be a teaser trailer on the video release. Probably. And maybe get like a theatrical trailer for the Super Bowl. I don't know. But overall, I just have a blast with these films. There are missions that I would accept time and time again. And that's just my spoiler breakdown. I wasn't going to do a spoiler video, but I felt like it, I felt like I had to go more into detail that I didn't get to go in the last video. Thank you all out there for watching this. Let me know your spoiler-filled thoughts about Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. And I thank each and every one of you. We're almost at 900 videos. Thank you for being a part of this journey with me on this channel and having positive movie discussion. In the meantime, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to check out these other Mission Impossible related videos. Stay safe and healthy, everyone. Till next time.